Hello everyone, I'm Saleha and this is Chai, Chat and Community. Tonight I'm chatting with Dr. Ajam Khokhar, who is a nutritionist with a PhD and works as a researcher and a lecturer in the School of Exercise and Nutrition Sciences at Deakin University. Ajam's research looks at how our behaviors influence what we eat and reducing salt intake. Hi Ajam, how are you? And thank you for coming to the show.
Hi, Salia. I'm doing really well, and thank you so much for having me on the show today.
It's a pleasure. Ajam, can you please tell us something about yourself?
Yes, I can tell you a lot about myself, so I'm going to have to condense my life in a few sentences.
Go for it.
So I was born in Pakistan. And then I migrated to Australia at quite a young age, and I've been here since. I've done all my schooling, all my university education from Australia, in fact, Deakin University itself. I'm married, so now going on nearly 10 years now.
Wow.
And yeah, so, and in my free time when I'm not working, I like to cook. I love cooking, and I love cooking Pakistani food. And I like to read a lot, and I like to go anywhere with friends. I like to travel a lot. I like walking, and by walking, I know a lot of people might think, oh, it's just walking, but my husband and I tend to do long walks. So the longest walk I think we've done is about 38 kilometers.
Wow.
In one day. Yep, in one day. Yep.
Wow.
So that's something that we kind of, that's a hobby of ours as well. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell, Salia.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Tree. Thank you. Yes, I'm sure it'll be a great session with Ajam here. So Ajam, why did you decide to study nutrition?
Well, I always wanted to do research. That was something that I planned from, I guess, my undergraduate. So my undergraduate's in science, particularly focusing on biochemistry and physiology. And at that time, when I finished my undergrad, I wanted to be a physiologist. I wanted to do my research in physiology. And then life happens and things don't pan out the way you plan them. So I didn't make it in because the person that I was supposed to be working with, she got offered a new position and all sorts of things happened during that time. So I started to look at, kind of other areas that I would be interested in. And as I mentioned to you, that food was a really huge part of my life. So I thought, what, nutrition seems to be a really nice area. I started to look at different schools in our university, think about what research they were offering. And I thought at that time, oh, nutrition's a really up and coming kind of field. And it wasn't until I got into the School of Exercise and Nutrition Sciences at Deakin that I realized that there's a vast majority of research that was already being conducted and that I was completely unaware of. So at that point, I thought, what, this is a really interesting area. I spoke to a few people and I got an entry into my PhD program. And the rest is history, basically.
Absolutely. Can you explain why nutrition is so important for us?
Yeah.
And before that, can you explain to our listeners what exactly is nutrition and why it is so important?
Yep. So nutrition is basically a science, and it's all about what we eat, how we eat it, and how our body kind of uses what we eat as energy for our daily tasks, such as walking, running, whatever chores you're doing around the house, outside. It also provides energy to our brain as well, which is, our best friend. So it's really important, and we get a lot of nutrients from the foods that we eat. And it all comes down to you are what you eat. And, if you're eating a well-balanced diet, that's going to increase longevity of your life, and it's going to lower your risk of, chronic diseases such as cardiovascular disease and diabetes and cancer and so on.
So last week, actually, I talked about heart disease in women. So this is a really good way of connecting it, isn't it? You eat well, you look after your heart. And for someone like me, who only thinks with her heart, eating well is very, very important. I don't think I use my brains as much as I use my heart.
Yep, absolutely. And look, our heart needs that energy just as much as our brain does.
Absolutely. Um, so your specialty is looking into what we eat and reducing salt intake.
Yep.
Um, can you explain why?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned, there's a lot of factors that influence what we eat. And so my research kind of looks at, what are some of the factors that do influence, is it just things like how many people are living in a household? When you're thinking about what you're going to cook in a day, you have to think about how much money can I spend on a particular meal? And just remember, Salia, I know that it's really ironic because as nutritionists, our job is to promote healthy eating. And by healthy eating, I mean, a balanced diet that includes fruits and vegetables, dairy, meats, and cereals as well. So, but fruits and vegetables, if you go down to Coles or Woolies, you'll notice that fruits and vegetables aren't always cheap.
No,
So
it
that's the
isn't. Yes.
irony of our job. So, there's a lot of factors, and I think that financial aspect of being able to spend is not within the capacity of some people. So I look at kind of socioeconomic status as well, how much money people spend on particular foods, and then there's a lot of other factors as well that influence and whether if we know about nutrition, if we know that something's healthy, is that then going to translate into our behavior as well? As in, if I know that, fruits and vegetables are healthy, does that mean I'm actually going to go out and buy fruits and vegetable? Not necessarily,
Yep.
because there's a myriad of other factors that might influence why I can't eat fruits
Yes.
and vegetables and more of those expensive foods, particularly things like salmon as well, which are quite
Yes.
expensive.
Very.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, so, and I look at that in relation to foods that are high in salt as well. So, at the moment, I'm working with the Heart Foundation and also Vic Health to implement a statewide salt reduction strategy. And we're particularly targeting parents of young children, so children between the age of 0 to 12 years. And so I'm looking at, at the moment, what we know is that Victorians in general are eating too much salt. And
Wow.
if we put that into the perspective of our South Asian community, we love our salt. We put it in
Absolutely. Yes.
everything.
Everything.
um, and that's actually, it's like I said, everything. And I'm going to be making this point quite often throughout, everything in moderation. You know, too much of a good thing can be bad for you as well. With regards to salt, a lot of people know that salt is related to high blood pressure. So having too much salt throughout your life can lead to high blood pressure later on. And it's really important because high blood pressure in childhood then follows what we call a tracking pattern, whereby you see if a child has high blood pressure during childhood, that seems to track during adolescence and then also in adulthood as well. And then also with high blood pressure, that's a major risk factor for cardiovascular disease as well. So with regards to cardiovascular disease, in particular stroke and heart disease. So
So, do children have high blood pressure? Do they?
there are some
Wow.
children that will experience high blood pressure, and it's also to do with, it's not just one factor. Again, I think with nutrition there's so many other factors as well, and if we take obesity and overweight and we put those two combinations together, that's really a high risk for children in particular. And
Wow.
particularly later on in life, they're risking a higher risk of, I guess, diabetes as well later on in life. So it's really important to intervene during childhood, making sure that from the get-go, children are eating a well-balanced diet. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to eat like, salads and all of that. You can, I always say you can still lose weight. You can still have a balanced diet, even if you're eating roti, salan, whether you're eating dal, chawal, all of that. It's just about portion control, and it's also about incorporating other elements such as a salad as part of your dal chawal, where you're having your intake of cruciferous vegetables, leafy green vegetables as well.
Um, so a group that I follow, and someone wrote this on her wall. It said, "The way to a man's heart is through his stomach. No one asks about a woman."
Yep.
What would you say to mothers, whether they are new mothers, whether they are, mothers of young children and teenagers, and of course, also older mothers like me. I mean, we are so busy, feeding our kids, looking after our family, cooking food, that we kind of tend to not look after ourselves. And also, what is happening during the COVID times. All of us are working from home.
Yep.
So, you're looking after your children, you're cooking, you're looking after the house. So your food, a woman's food, takes a backseat.
Yeah,
So what
absolutely.
would you say
I
to
think,
that?
yeah, so that's a really good question because I'm going to put COVID aside for a second and get to that kind of
Sure,
towards the end.
absolutely.
So in terms of, a way to a man's heart, I think that is applicable to women as well. So I think a way to a woman's heart is through good food. And I always say, if you want a woman to fall in love with you, feed her good food. So and I think it's just the way society's changed so much. Particularly in our Asian community, I think we tend to, if we're making roti, for example, we're just standing there making roti and we're like, cow, cow, we're to our husbands, we're like, just eat it, just eat it, just eat it. And I think that's almost promoting a culture of passive consumption. And I think that in the long run, if you're looking at it from a health perspective, that's not always going to be a good thing for your husband. If you want him to live a long, healthy life, I think there needs to be a balance and there needs to be some sort of portion control. And having said that, that's not to say you can't enjoy food. Look, I always say food needs to be enjoyed. If you don't enjoy the food you eat, there's no point in eating it whatsoever. And so in terms of, I completely understand that women are busy. We are working, we're mothers, we have our household to look after as well. We have a husband to look after. And I think it's
And
all about,
children.
and children. So,
And children.
and
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. And I think particularly for Asian women, it's not about the age of the child, whether the child is 2 or 22, if they're living under your roof, they're your responsibility. So, I think from that perspective, it's all about, being able to manage your time. For young mothers, I think, particularly for mothers who are breastfeeding, one of the things that a lot of women don't know is that when you're breastfeeding, you need a high energy diet, right? Because you need to support your body as you're producing milk for your infant. And for that, you need to be eating the right amount of food. And also, making sure that when you have the baby in your hand, if you're breastfeeding them, whether it's formula feeding, whether it's breastfeeding, it doesn't matter. Trying to find ways where you can have really quick snacks, so whether it's things like, a little bit of dal and you're just having carrot sticks and you're dipping the carrot sticks in the dal and just having that, whether it's just raita and dipping carrot in that, and maybe it's a night before where you just cut up some vegetables, do some meal prep a night before and say, look, you know what, I really need to take care of myself. So whilst the infant is feeding, you're feeding yourself as well. Just like, when we say when the infant sleeps, the mother should be sleeping. It's
Yes.
exactly the same with food as well. So I think one of the messages that I'd like to get out to the young mothers or mothers first time mothers is, don't be so concerned about the dishes. They can wait. It can wait 10 minutes. They can wait an hour. They can wait 2 hours. It's really more important that you're looking after your health and the health of your infant. Everything else can take the back burner for some time, and it's not going to be the end of the world. So that's a message that I'd like to get out to young mothers. Again, as I said, I think finding really easy methods, whether you're having hummus, whether you're having a dip, whether you're making a roti a night before and having that whilst you're breastfeeding. For older mothers, I would suggest the same thing. Look, I know we're busy, but just finding really easy things to make. And I appreciate that, our kana is not, our food is not easy to make. Sometimes it can take an hour to make a chicken kadai, for example. So finding that time, it can be tough during the day as well, and I appreciate that. So if you have to, compromise a little bit, where you have to make a salad with your dal chawal, or whether you have to make the chicken kadai and you bring naan from outside, it's not the end of the world. With COVID, yes, it's been a little bit difficult. And I think we've all sort of adapted, particularly in Melbourne being, in a state of lockdown, and only being allowed to 1 hour a day for exercise. That can be really hard for some mothers as well. And so I think we're seeing that kind of trend of more sedentary lifestyle, so more sitting, and that's completely fine, for some time. Now that lockdown's over, I think we just need to be out. And Salia, I think with regards to exercise, it doesn't have to be, super like difficult for you to do. It should be something as easy as if it's a young mother, she can take the pram out, take the baby out for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever she's capable of doing, whenever she has the time. And I think also leaving the child with the husband or a grandparent, and just finding that time for yourself as well, for your own sanity, and just going out for a jog for half an hour. Again, that's something that it's okay, and I think we shouldn't feel guilty about doing that.
I'm going to read out a comment and show it to you. Hello, Noreen. So Noreen's taught her son to cook, and on weekend she gets a break from the kitchen. This is good on her.
That's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I think that's it. I think we just need to inculcate these kind of values within, it doesn't matter of the gender. I think whether you have a daughter, whether you have a son, teach them when they grow up, they're an adult. They need to be able to at least look after themselves. And cooking is a skill that I say, as a nutritionist, and any dietitian will tell you as well, cooking is a skill that every human being needs to have. It's not gender oriented.
And the best chefs are unfortunately men.
Yep, that's true.
I mean, in my house, my husband cooks better than me. I will take 1 hour to make, dal, sabzi, and a meat and rice. And my husband will do all of that in 10 minutes. And it will be so much better tasting. That's because he also likes food. So, I think it's a good life skill to have. We should teach our sons how to cook, to give ourselves a break, and also
Absolutely.
I think to just equip them for the future.
Absolutely. And, I'm the same. My husband tends to cook, and he loves to cook. And I think when you are a busy woman, when you have a career, even during my PhD, Salia, there were days where I'd just be really struggling. I'd have 10 hours, 12 hours a day at my desk, and I'd be reading or writing, and there'd be so much stress that, I'd come home and it'd be like, just relax. I can do the cooking tonight and it's not a problem. So I think you just need to have that supportive and environment as well. It's really important for women to be in that supportive environment.
This I think is more for me, but I will ask anyway. What about age-associated weight gain for women? And we all have babies. Women tend to put on weight, on the waist, on the stomach, at the back. The minute a child is born, and as we grow older, for someone like me who's got grown-up kids, what is a balanced nutrition for us, Ajam?
Okay,
so let's tackle the first one first.
Yeah. Let me just talk you through what happens to our body as we're aging, and particularly women as well. So, as an adult, women generally will carry more fat than men. So men tend to have more muscle mass than women, and that kind of follows us all the way through our life. And as you mentioned, that with increased parity, so with increased childbirth, we tend to retain more fat around our abdomen, so around our stomach area in particular. So as we age and as we go, older women go through menopause, there's a number of hormonal changes that occur as well in the body. And that's then going to lead to that extra fat mass as well, what we call deposition of fat mass. And so that's something that we can't avoid because all women have to go through menopause. So we have a decrease in our muscle mass and we have an increase in our fat mass. And men generally go through that as well, but it's just more women because we have more fat to begin with. We have less lean tissue, so less muscle. There are a number of other factors that are involved in this as well. So it's not just menopause. There's a lot of lifestyle changes that are occurring as well. So if you think about it, as we're aging, our motility, the amount that we can move around decreases as well, particularly as we get 65 plus. And that decreases. And then also our sedentary time, so the amount of time that we spend sitting increases. And that also leads to that increase in fat mass. And all of those factors kind of I guess, influence each other. And then we have the factor that we really don't have any control over, and that's genetics. So
Yes.
if you come from a family where, you know, women tend to just deposit more fat, that's something we just can't change, unfortunately. What we can do is we can use our diet and our exercise regime to kind of prolong our life, as I've said before as well. You know, keep moving as much as you can, even as you're aging. I think the best advice that I can give to women who are 50 plus, if you're going through menopause, keep doing some exercise, whether that's weight bearing exercise. Weight bearing exercise for women particularly is really important because it helps to strengthen our bones, and keep having calcium. Calcium, again, I cannot stress enough how important calcium, iron, and vitamin D are, because as I've said, you know, particularly with South Asian women, we tend to avoid or neglect having dairy products throughout our early, you know, up to 20s. And that's our time to be building our bones. And it's not until we reach our 50s to 60s where we have our first, you know, fracture that we realize, oh no, I should have been having sufficient amount of calcium. So it's really important that you're having enough calcium, vitamin D. If you feel that you're not getting enough calcium and vitamin D from your diet, then it's okay to go on a supplement. As a nutritionist, I would never recommend a supplement as your first point. It should be your last resort, because everything that you eat, you should be able to get sufficient amount of nutrients from that. So that's kind of the process that happens over the course of our life. In terms of having a balanced diet, like I said, there are particular micronutrients such as iron, calcium, vitamin D that we really should be focusing on during these times. So particularly for those who are going through menopause, I suggest increase your protein intake. So protein intake, again, is going to help with your muscle. And then also making sure that you're getting enough milk and, you know, dairy products. The latest kind of guidelines from the Heart Foundation, there's been a lot of debate about, you know, high fat versus low fat, eggs, you know, whether we should be having them every day, because eggs are a great source of protein. You know, if you are a person that or a woman that doesn't have any risk factors for heart disease or diabetes, it's completely fine to have one to two eggs a day. And I mean whole egg, and how you cook it is up to you, but I would recommend boiling it or poaching it as opposed to frying it. That's just the better option. And then increasing your milk intake. Again, the latest Heart Foundation guidelines are you should opt for full fat. Doesn't matter if it's full fat or low fat.
Oh, really? I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
So there was
Okay.
a lot of debate. There was a lot of debate about that because the Australian Dietary Guidelines actually recommend low-fat milk and dairy products, basically. So your yogurts, cheese, and milk.
Yes.
And now the latest guidelines have said, you know, based on evidence, scientific evidence, there's no harm in having full fat milk. Again, that depends on your overall diet as well.
So, like you know, you just talked about eggs and milk. So when I get hungry, that's what I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I have two boiled eggs, and my God, that fills me up. And then in my breakfast is coffee,
Yeah.
which is basically milk with a glass of milk with coffee, and
Yeah.
that keeps me full till about 11:30. Then I
Yeah.
have another half a glass of milk. Oh, there is a message for you, Ajam. Hang on. Can you read it? Yes.
Yes. Can you please explain what that when we are gaining weight, are we gaining fat or losing muscle? Yep, or both. Yes. So when you're losing weight, that depends. When you're trying to lose weight, you will be losing fat, but it also depends on the type of exercise that you're doing. So if you're doing what we call resistance training, where you're doing, you know, weight bearing exercises, you're going to be losing fat and gaining muscle. Okay. So you will actually, so if you stand on a weighing scale and if you're doing, you know, consistently for 3 to 6 months, if you're doing weight bearing exercises and you want to tone your body, you will actually gain weight, but you'll be losing fat. Does that make sense? So your weight will increase because your muscle mass is increasing, and that's heavier than fat.
So can you explain to our viewers what you mean by weight bearing exercise?
Yep. So anything where you're using dumbbells, are weight bearing exercises. So if you go to the gym, if you're doing squats and you're doing barbell squats, you know, anything that with weight other than your body
Yep.
weight. Okay. So that's weight bearing exercise.
Um, I'm going to ask this first because so many people can't go to the gym for whatever reason, and you and I both know the reasons.
Yeah.
So, is walking good enough? And
Yeah.
if walking is good enough, because we will not jog. Culturally, that's not something that we've grown up with,
Yeah.
um, and and a lot of women can't or won't go to the gym. So, what are the options for them?
Yep. So, and I can completely empathize with those women who can't or won't go to the gym. It's quite intimidating to go to the gym for the first time. I remember the first time I stepped into a gym, and it was a horrible feeling because I thought, okay, well, there's all these women, they know exactly what they're doing, they have this goal, and I don't know what I'm doing here. Should I be here? Should I not be here? So it was a very overwhelming kind of process. But I think if you cannot go to the gym, and that's completely fine. Again, Sally, I think there's a financial aspect to this as well,
Absolutely, and it's
where
not cheap going to
gyms
the
are
gym.
expensive.
Very
Yeah,
expensive.
absolutely. And particularly for me, one of the issues was I couldn't go to a mixed gym because I wanted to be in my comfort zone. I wanted to be able to remove my hijab and be able to exercise, because with a hijab it can add a
Yes.
level of constraint when you're sweating. And so yeah, and so I ended up joining a women's gym, and that was a lot more expensive than if I was to join a co-ed gym, for example. So I completely understand that walking, I would say, is the best form of exercise that you can do. And the reason for that is your whole body's moving, your arms are moving, your legs are moving, and it's just such a fantastic, whether you have, whether you take music or whether you go out and, with your partner or your friends or your sons and daughters, whatever it is. But I would recommend about 45 to 60 minutes a day is what you should be aiming for, and a bit of a brisk walk. So I understand that women who are a bit heavier and have just started walking, it's okay to be slow, but you want to be picking up the pace as you improve. And then also not just walking on a flat surface, try to challenge yourself as well. So try to do an incline walk, so climbing up a hill. If you're a new mother and you're trying to lose that baby fat, again, walking with the pram over a hill, that's really good as well. And then the other exercise that I would recommend, if anyone, I guess it comes down to comfort level as well, is cycling. So cycling is another really, really good way to lose fat and to get your legs moving a bit as well. So that's another thing that I would recommend. So whatever suits you, but again, yes, walking, I would say, is the best form of exercise that you could do.
And you can break up your walks, right? You don't have to do 60 minutes at a stretch. You can do 15 minutes and, in intervals. I mean, I know that's how I
Absolutely.
walk,
Yep,
maybe 20
absolutely.
minutes, 25 minutes.
Yep.
And women tend to walk all the time, all over the house. And I remember the first time I started losing weight, again, like you, I've never been fat. I'm very small built. So I've never had this issue of putting on weight, but I did.
Yep.
And the 10,000 steps, that's not difficult at all. Not
No,
at
it's
all.
not. No, it's not.
Just being in the house, yes,
Yep.
it's and when I can't go out on the roads to walk. I just walk around my backyard. I
Yep.
read somewhere there was a lady who was really big, and I'm sure, I don't remember whether she was from Melbourne or not. She was too embarrassed to go out for a walk because she was so big, and she was
Yeah.
overweight. So she just walked around her hills hoist.
Yep. Yep.
And
So
once
you.
she started, yes,
Yep.
okay,
Yeah. So I think that breaking up the walks is a really good idea. And I think that's the other thing I wanted to say was that target of 10,000 steps isn't difficult, especially if you are walking around the house, if you've got stairs in the house, if you're climbing up and down, and then again, if you're doing 15-20 minute intervals, it's very easy to meet that 10,000 step kind of
absolutely,
quota.
yes. I did that, so I know 10,000 is
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah. And I think
But
we
again,
also like to put, we also like to put a limit on everything. We're like, it has to be 30 minutes or it has to be 20 minutes. You don't want to be wearing yourself out. You have to look at your
yes,
own weight as well. And you want to have a balance between how much food you're eating and how much exercise you're doing as well. So you don't want to
absolutely,
keel over one day. We want you to not, do your energy in should equal your energy out,
yes.
basically. So you don't want to be doing too much exercise and not eating well, because I think a lot of women tend to to do this. They think that the way to lose weight is to just stop eating and
Which
just
is
go
wrong.
crazy
Yes.
with working out.
Yes.
That's not the healthy approach. And it's not, like I said, it has to be a balanced diet. I wouldn't ever promote a fad diet in any way, shape, or form. I would say, look, eat a balanced diet. Eat your cereals, eat your dairy, have your meats, have your vegetables, have your fruits. Those are the 5 food groups. And then steer clear of things like, chips and processed foods. Basically, is what I'm getting at. And that's not to say you shouldn't completely eliminate anything from your diet. I eat everything, but it has to be in a balance. So it's not like I'm eating chips every single day and not
Yeah.
having enough fruits and vegetables. So that balance is really important.
Yeah, that's what I do. I eat my rubbish food days are Friday and Saturday, and the rest 5 days I'm really good. Unless my daughter
Excellent.
comes
Yeah.
bearing chocolate muffins,
Yeah.
and then I'm eating it because I'm like, oh, I can't.
Look, I think we're all a bit of a sucker for chocolate. Chocolate's my weakness as well. So, and there are times where I go to like a conference or something, and there'd be like a really nice chocolate mud cake or something there, and I'd be like, listen, I'm at a conference, I'm overseas, I just need to spoil myself. Once in a while, doesn't hurt.
Yes.
So,
Noreen has another question for you.
can you give advice to a young person who has a poor body image due to being overweight? Yes. So this is a really interesting question, and thank you for that, Noreen. I think with social media, it has such a huge influence, and particularly for women, not just today. Before social media, we had magazines, and magazines were always portraying this really thin model, this Victoria's Secret looking model. She was tall, she was thin, she had the perfect body. But you have to understand that those models are going through a stage of a lot of issues as well. We don't know what's happening in the background. We don't know how much energy they're consuming. And so I think the best advice I can give is, look, it's a really long journey if you want to lose weight. I know a lot of I guess influencers are now promoting this idea of what a healthy body image should look like, and I think sometimes it's also at the we're almost compromising or jeopardizing our health as well. So that be happy with what you look like, that's completely fine, but if you are overweight or obese, that is actually going to increase your risk of chronic diseases in life as well. So whilst I say, look, it's great that you're comfortable in what you're doing, please don't jeopardize your health. Maintain a weight that is going to be healthy for you. Losing weight, if somebody wants to lose weight, one of the key things that I say again and again is, it is not easy. It is not going to be easy. It's going to be a long, arduous journey, and it's something that's not going to happen overnight. And I know we're in that phase where we're busy and we want quick results and we expect quick results. That's not how it works. It's just as simple. The reality is it takes time, and it's going to take a lot of effort. And it has to be, if you're looking at it in a percentage form, it has to be 50% diet and 50% exercise. That's just the reality of it. Again, I would say to those women who are really thin, those women sometimes have problems as well, trying to gain weight. Please don't ever let anyone put you down. If you're happy in your own state of mind, that's all that matters. And I know it's a lot easier said than done. I've been through that. I've always been a really thin person wanting to gain weight. And it wasn't until after I got married and a lot of changes happened in my life that I slowly, steadily started to gain weight. So I think it works either way, whether you're a sort of a bigger person or a really thin person as well. And I think, Salia, in our community, in our society, we have this misconception that whether you're a chubby person, you must be a healthy person. A chubby child is an indication of a healthy child.
I just gave you the example. Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's not necessarily the case. It's all about being, healthy, having that balanced diet. A healthy child, a chubby child does not equal healthy, and and similarly, a really thin child does not mean that they're also healthy. So it's, and as people from the South Asian community in particular, we have fat that's under our skin, which is called subcutaneous fat. And then we have another type of fat, which is surrounding our organs. And we find that whilst we are thinner We might be, South Asian people might be thinner, but we tend to carry more fat around our organs. And that's actually the bad kind of fat. That's going to increase our risk of particularly high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes. And that's why you see, even in thin South Asian people, we have a high incidence, a high prevalence of diabetes and heart-related conditions. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but
well, Noreen, you are listening. So if it doesn't answer your question, please let us know. And
please keep
Ajam
asking. Yes.
Yes, please keep asking, because I'm going to ask this question because you hear about all dietitians, and I'm not one for fat diets. Again, you and I have talked about it. So when you talk, yes, she has answered. So
perfect.
Glad, Noreen.
Great.
So we as South Asians, we don't have pasta, we don't have stir fried vegetables, we don't have steaks or salmon on a regular basis. We may have it sometimes, but that's not a staple diet. A staple diet is dal, chawal, vegetables, meat.
The best kind of diet, I would say.
So what is a balanced meal if we look at breakfast, lunch, and dinner? I mean, again, it depends from person to person, but what would you classify as a balanced meal, say, for an adult?
Yep. So I think let's look at what we should be eating throughout the day. So you should be eating 3 meals and then at least 3 to 4 snacks throughout the day for an average person. So here we're talking about an average height, average weight person. Of course, this is going to vary, and it just depends on you as a person. So when you're hungry, eat. That's what I say. Having said that, I think one of the key things for us, again, as you mentioned, it's chawal, roti, and it's all very processed. It's all white flour. So if anything that I can advise today is, I know it's difficult and I know it's a hard change to make. Having said that, I'm still going to advise, if you can, and if you're a young adult who is from a South Asian community, please try to opt for a whole grain option. Whether it's a whole grain paratha, you can get so you can exactly. So you can even get, like, if you're buying like frozen parathas, you can get whole meal parathas as well, and so opt for that option instead, and stop eating. The thing is, a lot of what we tend to do is we sit in front of the telly and we eat, and we tend to eat a lot more. And research shows that when kids or adults, whoever it is, when we sit in front of a screen, we tend to passively consume more food. And I think that's one of the changes. If you can incorporate that in your life, try to sit with the family and have a conversation over dinner as opposed to watching telly. And so that's one takeaway message here. Try to, again, swap your foods as opposed to eliminating your foods. Okay, so swapping foods means, again, going for brown rice instead of white rice. I do not like the taste of white rice. I'm going to be totally honest. I'm going to be totally honest. Listen, I eat white rice because it tastes good. For me, food is an experience. I cannot compromise with that. So, and again, if you are going to have white rice, and that's completely fine. If you like white chawal, completely fine. Again, it comes down to portion control. So if you're having dal chawal, and if you have, a large kind of plate, you want to make sure that only, a quarter or a third of your plate is filled with rice or chawal, and then majority of it should be filled with dal, because dal is a really good source of protein as well. Which brings me to my point of, we tend to overcook our foods. So I think if the dal, it should be ready within 30 minutes or so. If it's a little bit undercooked, it's not going to be too harmful, So you have to compromise just a little bit. Again, if you're having dal chawal, if you're having some kind of eggs in your meal, try to incorporate, you can get a bag of like mixed salad from Coles. It's like $3, and if you don't like the taste of it, what I tend to do is I add a bit of dressing to it, whether it's lemon, whether it's zesty, something that you like, whether it's adding a little bit of, chili to it, that make you eat it. So play around with flavors. That's really important, and make food that you like. I'm not expecting you to eat pate, like I'm not expecting you to eat just plain, just salad. That's not what I do. If I'm going to make dal chawal, for example, I'll have a side of, half of my plate will be covered with green vegetables as well. And that can be any vegetable of your choice, whether it's, carrots, whether it's broccoli, that's up to you. And if you don't like broccoli, because in our culture, we tend to really prioritize carrots and cucumbers. We really love our carrots, cucumbers, and onions. So if that's what you like, that's completely fine, because you're still getting some form of nutrients from those vegetables as well. In terms of breakfast, again, if you love bread, if you love having white bread, that's completely fine. If you love adding butter to your bread, that's fine. Just don't be really heavy with the butter, particularly for, older women. If you can, try to use margarine. Again, I'm talking to older women, just because in Australia we have mandatory fortification of margarine with vitamin D. So what that basically means is that all margarines and spreads have vitamin D added to them. So, as I mentioned, for older women, it's really important that you're getting enough calcium and vitamin D. So that's a nice source of vitamin D as well. And then if you're having eggs, again, it's fine to have eggs. If you want to add a bit of pepper, if you want to add a bit of salt to it, there's no harm. Sometimes, flavor trumps everything else. So if you're having, a big bowl of salad and you're adding a little bit of salt to it, you know what? You just have to balance it out. You're still having great nutrition there. And then in terms of your meals, again, I think for us who eat, meat, again, not cooking it so much that it loses all its iron, and particularly because women who are menstruating, we need iron. Women who aren't menstruating, we still need a bit of iron as well. So that's something to be kind of mindful of. So not cooking the hell out of your foods is really
So
important.
not pulled beef or pulled lamb or pulled goat.
Exactly. And I appreciate, look, I think one of the things is that we can, like, I for one cannot eat raw meat. I just cannot eat it. If it's raw, I won't eat it. So again, if you're going to have like chicken karahi, or if you're going to have gosht karahi, cooking it for maybe 20 minutes less than what you normally would, still trying to retain a little bit of nutrients in that. Because iron, what happens with iron is that it breaks down with heat. So the longer that you cook it, the less iron that meat is going to have. The other alternative is if you like liver. Liver is, I guess, the most powerful source of iron. So if you like eating liver, so liver is a really, really great source of iron. If you are iron deficient, for any women who out there who are iron deficient, start with eating liver. You can also look at other sources of iron and protein if you're a vegetarian. Again, being a vegetarian or vegan, absolutely no harm whatsoever in following that lifestyle. But what I always say to my students as well is, listen, it has to be a well-balanced and a well-planned diet, because we find that women who are following a vegan or vegetarian diet, they find it hard to incorporate those particular micronutrients such as iron and calcium and vitamin D as part of their diet. So, eating things like tofu, really great for protein and iron as well. Selecting milks that have iron or calcium added to them is really good as well. So whether you're having almond milk or rice milk, make sure you're choosing a milk that has calcium added to it. Otherwise, there's really no point. So
what about snacks, Ajam, which is the most important thing? Yes.
Yeah. So I think snacks, again, it's about swapping things, and it's a lot easier to meet our fruit kind of recommendation. So we should be having 2 serves of fruit. So 2 serves of fruits means, 1 large banana or 2 small mandarins, and that's sufficient enough for one day. So I think fruits are really kind of on the go. You can just grab a piece of fruit, even if you're heading out for work, grab a banana, grab an apple, cut up some mango season's now approaching. So cut up some mangoes, chuck them in your lunchbox, chuck them in your kid's lunchbox, and that's it. I think those are really, really quick snacks. And I would prefer a banana over like banana chips, So I think that's what I mean by swapping. And I think we tend to do a lot of like salty snacks as well. So I think try to, and I'm not saying completely avoid those, but if you're a person that's trying to lose weight, I think swap those salty snacks for a piece of fruit, or even add a bit of fruit to yogurt. If you want to add a bit of honey to your yogurt, that's really fine as well, just to add that flavor. If you want to add a bit of muesli to your yogurt as well. But I think the best way, because I'm talking particularly to the Asian community, add a piece of banana to your yogurt. And that's a really good snack. If you try to avoid things like ruafza, and milk, because that's just plain sugar. It's like drinking cordial, basically.
Oh God. Yes.
Yeah. And then also swapping again your juices and soft drinks for water. And water tends to fill you up as well.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
the only downside is you're probably going to go to the toilet a little bit more, but that's
I'll live
okay.
with that.
It's a small price to pay.
Yes. Wow. And I'm sure we can have a couple of days in the week where, cheat days where we can eat whatever we want.
Yeah.
I know that's what I do. So it has helped for me. And I'm guessing, people my age, and we are all built similarly. So I would think it's the first week, don't you think, Ajam, which is the toughest. And after that, your body just gets used to it.
Yep, absolutely. And I think the first week, particularly if you change your diet completely, so don't change your diet completely. Eat what you love eating, but exercise, exercise as much as you can. You need that energy to be able to exercise. And one of the key things that I want to just quickly point out, I think the huge misconception, which totally negates the science behind it, is when women say, oh, I'm completely cutting out carbohydrates from my diet. And I'm like, oh, this is no way. There's, because carbohydrates should make up the majority of your diet. And we're talking about 45 to 60% of your diet should be predominantly, your energy should be coming from carbohydrates. And that carbohydrates are in bread and in rice, particular pasta as well. So don't cut out carbohydrates, don't cut out chawal, don't cut out roti from your thing. It's about portion control as opposed to cutting things out. I would never, as a nutritionist, I would never tell you to cut out anything from your diet. It's about, swapping things, particularly with your sugar intake. It's about, and I can promise you, if you just cut out your sugar, start with sugary drinks, it's going to make a huge, huge difference to your diet and to your weight as well.
Noreen has another question.
Yep, if fat or cholesterol levels are high. Yeah, so cholesterol, I think you can reduce it. So with diet, so I think the best way, Noreen, is to incorporate again the healthier fats in your diet. So things like, if you like eating avocado, if you like eating eggs, you can reverse your cholesterol levels. Sometimes it gets past a specific point where you are going to need medication, just like high blood pressure, and just like, diabetes in particular as well. But particularly high blood pressure, and cholesterol, very similar. You can control it with diet until it gets to a certain point. So it's better to control it earlier rather than later on. And of course, nuts are a really good snack and a really good source of healthy fats as well.
Noreen, I love avocado too. Love it. I can have avocado all the time. Nuts, yes, but also we need to again be mindful of the portion, isn't it? Once I start having nuts, I never stop.
Oh yes,
yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, and I think, Sally, the best way to control that is if you go into Coles or Woolies, they actually have these little packets, and they have those LD as well, of almonds and different nuts, and so I tend to pick those up, and I think it's about 30 grams, which is the recommendation anyway. So that way you're limiting yourself. And if you just take out one packet and put the rest away, I think that's portion control in itself.
Well, because I was eating so much, and I know you're supposed to eat a handful and no more. But when you're working, you're at your computer and you're working. It's like I'm just putting the nuts in my mouth, and it just doesn't stop. So a colleague gave me a little yogurt container. The ones that you get. I don't know where she got it from. But I used to put my nuts there, and I think it was about 20 grams, 25 grams, and that
Yep.
was perfect. Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you so much, Ajam. This has been really, really good.
Yeah,
Thank you so
absolutely.
much for
Thank you so
coming
much for
to the
having me.
show.
Yep. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I think I'm so passionate about food in general. I can talk about this till the cows come home. So
Yes, I realize that. And yes, we will be in touch. We will do
yeah,
another
absolutely.
story because this is a conversation that will never die, you know.
Yeah,
As
absolutely.
long as we
Absolutely.
live, food and nutrition and how to be healthy.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Thank you so much for your time, Salia.
Thank you. Okay. Bye,
All right.
everyone. Have a good night. Bye, Ajam.
Take care. Bye.